This is Co-op HD1 HD3 Hornsby, radio for people, not for profit. Welcome to Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show. Each week, we explore how your library is more than books. The library is knowledge, technology, and inspiration for our community. Hey, welcome back. I'm your host today, Kanya Lyons, and I want to wish everyone Happy New Year. This is our first show of 2018, and we're absolutely thrilled to have reference librarians Julie Brown and Maggie Bond on the show today to talk about the true crime literary genre and talk about the library's new true crime book club, which starts this year, very soon. So welcome to the show, you guys.
Thank you.
Maggie's been on the show before, back in November, talking about the romance novel book club, and we'll do a little callback to that later. But Julie, this is your first time on the show, so let's hear a little bit about who you are. Where are you from?
That's a weird question for me. I've lived in Austin for the past 10 years. I grew up in the Midwest, but I haven't lived there in a long time. I was in Portland. I was in Vancouver. But now I guess that you could say maybe I'm from Austin, almost.
So kind of a free spirit traveler.
Yeah.
A little bit. And so how did you come to work for the Austin Public Library?
Well, it took a very long time to figure out what I wanted to do after undergrad. And I always liked libraries, spent a lot of time there. And I started thinking that would be a good thing for me to do. And so I started volunteering at Twin Oaks. And then I was really lucky to get a job at Twin Oaks right when I started going to UT to get my library degree. And the timing worked out really well. And now I'm a reference librarian at the Central Library. And it's great.
Yay!
Yeah.
So let's talk for just 1 second. You mentioned the Central Library.
Yes.
How's everyone liking the new building? What's it like to work there?
It is mostly amazing.
It is. What Maggie said. It's great.
Yeah.
There's a few little things that we still have to figure out, but we're having such a great time. And we're having some really successful programs and just having so much fun seeing everyone enjoying the building.
Yeah, I think that's the nicest part is after such a long wait, seeing people come in and seeing their reaction to it, seeing how many people want to bring their families in just to see the building because it's so beautiful. It's really... I feel very fortunate to be working there.
Yeah, every day feels like a weekend now. I just had a friend just text me yesterday like, oh my God, my daughter and I came to the new library. It's so great. You're so lucky you get to work there. And I was like, yes, I know.
Yes.
I know. It's really beautiful. Okay, well, so the new book club that we're going to talk about, the True Crime Book Club, is at the new Central Library, which is why we were talking about that. But let's go back in time. How did the two of you realize that you shared a love of true crime?
Well, one day Maggie and I were in telephone reference together chatting, and she used the phrase sweet baby angel, which triggered in my mind. I had to ask her, do you listen to the My Favorite Murder podcast? Because that is one of many catchphrases in that podcast. If you like true crime and comedy, you should check it out. And Maggie confirmed.
And then we found that we both had this almost exactly the same gold medallion on our keychain that says "Stay sexy, don't get murdered," which is also another one of the many catchphrases from My Favorite Murder that each one of our sisters had given us. And we've been spookily connected by popular culture ever since. It was very difficult to create this book club because every single thing that the other person said, the other person was like, I 100% agree.
It was very stressful for us.
It was so stressful because we were just on the same page about everything.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, so how did you guys get lured into the world of true crime, reading true crime and listening to true crime?
Well, I was kind of a creepy kid.
Same.
Yeah. When I was a child, I went through a variety of phases where I was reading everything that I could about the Salem witch trials, American slavery, the Holocaust, mental illness.
Light reading.
Light reading for a 7 through 10-year-old. And true crime seems like a natural extension of all the creepy things that I loved reading about, the horrors of our real world that I've liked learning about since I was a little kid.
Yeah, I was also a strangely morbid child. I dipped my toe in with Murder, She Wrote, and Jessica Fletcher is great.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with it to the point where I received the Murder, She Wrote board game when I was 6. And
Which is amazing.
could not find another child to play with. So I had to like beg adults to play this game with me, which is, I don't know why there was not some kind of intervention at that point, but you know, that was it. And then Unsolved Mysteries was another big one. Just that creepy theme music, have like a Pavlovian response of like delight and terror to that. Yeah. So I don't know. I just always liked kind of dark things.
Awesome. Well, so for listeners that are just now joining us, this is Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show on Co-op 91.7 FM and streaming at koop.org. Show details are at library.austintexas.gov/volumes. We're talking about true crime with librarians Julie Brown and Maggie Bond, who both work at the Central Library, and there's a true crime book club that will be starting at the Central Library soon. So let's talk about a little bit about like what is your favorite, like what do you like the best about true crime? I mean, you'll kind of hint it around a little bit, but like if you had to pick like one thing that sucks you in. And
I am really fascinated by true crime can be many different things. For me, I want there to be a murder involved.
Yeah.
And I'm very interested in the psychology of killers and their childhoods. I used to read lots and lots of autobiographies, but I only wanted to read up through their adolescence, and then I kind of lost interest. I don't need to know about their career. I see what they're doing. But I want to know about how they became who they were based on their bizarre childhood experiences. And that's my favorite part of true crime, is that little section of the story.
what about you, Julie?
No, that's a good one for sure. I'm definitely also primarily into murder. When I'm reading to read about murder, I should clarify that for people if you're just tuning in. But yeah, I like murders, definitely serial killers, which is kind of obvious. Things like the mafia. Some people are really into mafia stuff. I'm not really that fascinated by it, because to me it's like you have a grudge with someone, this person got shot, that's it. I mean, like the psychology is more interesting to me. Sometimes cold cases can be interesting, although occasionally you're just like, I want to know what happened, and you can't know. But then you can go into like a weird subreddit and like see what amateur detectives are doing, and that's interesting too.
True story. It is kind of wonderful that with a lot of true crime, you don't have the satisfaction of really feeling like you have the full story. You know that you don't ever really get to have the full story.
So what's the stigma attached to this? Because I know there was a little bit of, so
I think the main one is that if you're that interested in murdering, there might be something going on with you.
Really?
Yeah. I feel like some people just are uncomfortable with it, and they think that maybe you're interested in harming someone, when in reality, I think a lot of it is just a fascination. And I think for me, and for I think maybe a lot of other women, because I think it is predominantly sort of associated with women more than men, the idea that you're kind of aware of the fact that you could be a victim at some point in your life. And so almost by reading these stories, you're feeling like you're prepared. You're lessening the anxiety, or you're kind of neutralizing it in a way. I don't know.
I also think that some of the stigma comes from a very real societal ambivalence about consuming real life horror and trauma for fun.
Right.
I think that that's a reasonable ambivalence to have.
Yes.
And definitely until pretty recently, that's relegated a lot of true crime to just those bottom of the barrel, just some journalist trying to make a buck in the moment from a sensationalist story, just whatever, paperbacks. But lately we've really seen an upturn in the quality of content that's coming out.
Yeah, a lot more literary true crime, which makes me happy, because I was an English major and I just don't want to read. I don't want to read something that's not well written just to get some details that you could find looking on Wikipedia. If I'm going to sit down with a book, I want it to still have a great narrative.
Yeah, this should go without saying for our True Crime Book Club, but it is important to us to have well-written books that we're reading.
Yes. Yes.
And sometimes that's a little bit more difficult for true crime than in other genres.
Yeah, it can be challenging. As Maggie said, it can be very much of like a quick, this was dashed off very quickly, 500 pages that may not make a lot of sense from beginning to end, but people will still read it just because of the sheer shock value. But we're trying to stay away from that.
Well, and so what would you guys say, like, what kind of going back to the stigma thing about the celebritization of murderers or serial killers or whatever? Like,
Yeah, that's a good point. We were talking about that before we came here today. And with Charles Manson recently passing away, I think that kind of came up to the surface a little bit because there are people, like, you'll see someone wearing a Charles Manson t-shirt occasionally. Right. And yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a line that needs to be drawn. I mean, it's fine to have interest and fascination, but there is a weird, like, population of people who seem to sort of valorize them in a way.
Yeah, just like you brought up, I think, the mafia earlier, just like we are making these horrible sociopathic killers that were part of the mafia into these great heroes.
Yeah.
We do the same thing with our serial murderers sometimes.
We do. Yeah. And I think we want to stay away from that. I think another thing about the stigma is people being afraid. People don't want to confront the reasoning or the reasons or whatever led someone to commit these crimes. The idea this person is a monster. So we don't have to think about what may have contributed to that. I'm not saying that there's an excuse for someone to murder someone else, but Maggie said, when you look at the childhoods, there can be some pretty disturbing stuff.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by the, like, psychology behind it. Like, what makes a murderer? Why? I mean, I totally get where you're coming from. I'm not trying to put you on I was just curious.
No, that question is definitely interesting because I'm also fascinated by kind of the people that are fascinated with serial killers to the point that they are writing them letters or getting married to them while they're in prison.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, these are interesting people, and I'd love to read a book about them.
Well, let's put a pin in this. We're going to get right back into this conversation. We're going to take a short little break, and we're going to hear about some of the amazing events that are happening at libraries all over town. And then we're going to have some brief announcements, and then we'll get right back into this conversation. Thanks, guys. Ladies.
My name is Blair Parsons, and I'm a librarian at the Central Library. Each week, I highlight a few programs for adults that are happening around the Austin Public Library. Our full list of programs may be found on the library's events calendar. Thursday, January 4th, the Central Library will screen The Secret Life of Lance Lesher, a deeply personal and psychological portrait of Lance Lesher. Told through memories of trauma and triumph, the film provides a doorway into Lesher's profound insights on creativity, the subconscious, work ethic, and spirituality. A discussion with Lance Lesher and filmmaker Sandra Adair will follow the screening. The film begins at 6 o'clock p.m., Thursday, January 4th at the Central Library. Saturday, January 6th, the Twin Oaks Branch Library will host Dara Zeikerman for Why Less Equals More, How to Create a Stress-Free New Space in the New Year. Dara will give an overview of her step-by-step process for both personal and professional spaces and provide guidance on connecting challenges, priorities, and visualizations of your new and improved space. The program is from 3:30 to 4:30, Saturday, January 6th at the Twin Oaks Branch Library.
Hey there, Austin. Teen Program Specialist Michael Harley from the Downtown Central Library here. Even the most enthusiastic budding musician can find themselves frustrated when learning to play an instrument for the first time. Here at the library, we've got one instrument which may just be perfect for teen musicians in training. Beginning Wednesday, January 6th, and running every Wednesday through February at 4:30 p.m., the Manchac Road branch hosts Ukulele Club, where participants can learn simple chords and songs. This program is recommended for ages 10 and up. More details for these and additional programs can be found at library.austintexas.gov/events.
This is Ann Minner, Managing Librarian at the Old Quarry Branch. I get to highlight some information for families this week. After a busy holiday season for everyone, Storytimes begin again next week system-wide. Storytime programs introduce young children to books, rhymes, music, and other fun activities. Austin Public Library is proud to offer programs matched to the typical attention spans and developmental levels of different ages of children. We'll have toddler time, preschool time, sensory story time, pajama time, books and babies, music and movement, Spanish story time, and all ages story time. We're also offering various dual language story times, including Spanish and French. We are really looking forward to seeing everyone. More details are at library.austintexas.gov/storytimes.
You're listening to Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show on Co-op 91.7 FM and KOOP.org. Radio for people, not for profit.
This is Joe,
Martha,
and Lisa,
co-hosts of Writing on the Air.
do you like to read?
do you like to write?
We do too, and we love bringing you the best authors and other creative types from Texas and beyond.
Listen to Writing on the Air every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central Time.
Voted Best Book Discussion in the Austin Chronicles 2015 Best of Austin.
Wednesday at 6 o'clock p.m.
on 91.7 FM.
Or koop.org.
Hey, welcome back to Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show. We're about to dive right back into our true crime discussion, but first I just wanted to take a moment to let everyone know that our beloved Windsor Park branch is going to be closing for renovations starting on Friday, January 19th. And I just wanted to throw that out there because lots of people use that branch. It will be closed for probably about 6 months. There are lots of other branches nearby: University Hills branch, St. John branch, Willie Mae Kirk branch, Carver branch. And, you know, there's information on the library's website, which is library.austintexas.gov. With that said, let's dive right back into this true crime discussion. So today's guests, we have Julie Brown and Maggie Bond, and we are talking about the True Crime Book Club that you guys are starting. So when does it start? Where does it happen?
So our first meeting is going to be on January 30th. We're going to meet on the last Tuesday of every month. So this one will be, January 30th at 6:30 p.m. They'll be at the New Central Library in what we call the living room of the library, which is up on the 6th floor. It's going to be a cozy spot. We're going to have amazing chairs. There are so many amazing chairs at the New Central Library. That's what we should have been talking about.
You need to come to the library just to sit in all the chairs.
It's true.
True. So the living room's just outside of the rooftop garden, right?
Exactly.
Okay. That's a very easy place to find and a favorite spot for a lot of folks.
It is. It's very cozy, as Maggie mentioned. We have got great chairs up there, my personal favorite chairs in the library. We're also going to have some snacks, and we are going to make some very cool buttons. So, you know, if you're into buttons.
What do our buttons say again? We got a little crafty with it for this first meeting.
We tried to incorporate some Dewey Decimal numbers in there. Obviously, it's on brand for us as librarians.
I mean, any true crime aficionado knows 364 for murder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got a dial 364.1523 for murder.
Whoa.
We've got you're in a 291.9, call your dad, which is you're in a cult, call your dad, which is another catchphrase from My Favorite Murder.
Yeah, and if you immediately got that reference, then you obviously need to be at our
We
True
need
Crime
to
Book
see you there
Club.
on Tuesday. We need to be aware of you.
We will see you on the 30th.
Yes.
Tuesday, January 30th.
Yes.
6:30 p.m. Central Library, 710 West Cesar Chavez Street, in
Yes.
case people don't know. And information is online, but you can also call the library's main number, 512-974-7400, to get information about the book club. So I'm guessing you're going to read a lot of books about murder, because we've already talked a lot about murder, but let's talk about some of the other little tidbits that are going to, cults got mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What other kinds of things do you anticipate?
Well, just like the romance book club, which I also do, where everyone has their thing that they love.
Maggie
might love
has very
office
diverse
romances.
interests. I just want to say,
I love
murder
love
and
and
romance.
murder.
Yeah.
Or they love cowboy stories. I feel like true crime aficionados have their thing that they really love, and that could be serial killers, it could be unsolved crimes, it could be cults, just those things that really fascinate them. And we want to read about all of it.
Yeah, we're trying to create a very well-rounded list of true crime, and obviously we want to hear from our club members to get some feedback from them on what they're interested in reading. The first book that we're reading is called The Wilderness of Ruin by Roseanne Montello. It is about America's first child serial killer by Jesse Pomeroy, and that was in the 19th century in the Boston area, and it is quite disturbing.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
So are you soliciting people, are invited, anyone from the public is invited to come to the book club?
Yes.
Whether they're aficionados of true crime, or they're just kind of starting to whet their appetite with true crime, right? They can,
absolutely.
They can learn along the way, and they can bring their interests, their book suggestions, and things like that.
Yes. After the first meeting of the Romance Book Club, I had an insanely long list of recommendations from people, which was wonderful. People really wanted to share the authors and the books that they were passionate about, and I want to look those up and see if it would be possible for us to schedule them. And we definitely want to do the same thing for the True Crime Book Club.
We do. We've got a long spreadsheet already.
We already have quite a spreadsheet because we're librarians. We like to organize. We like to put things in cute little boxes. But so we already have a lot of books that we're considering reading for you guys on all kinds of topics. But I'm sure that you guys have some really great reads that we haven't heard of yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and so apart from kind of some of the little topics that we mentioned just now, what are some of the sort of larger issues that y'all are hoping to explore in this book club?
Well, I think that there are a lot of issues that underlie a lot of these disturbing stories, whether it's something to do with gender, sexuality, race, the media, our mental health care system. All of these things can sort of converge in a way that can result in a tragedy, some kind of a story that's fascinating to us for the larger implications of what's going on beyond just the facts of the case. And so one of the books that we have coming up in the future, I think in April, we're reading The Grim Sleeper.
Yes.
That is about a serial killer who was active in the Los Angeles area that was murdering African-American sex workers primarily. Oh. And because of that, because his victims weren't considered, quote unquote, what you would say the perfect victim from the media standpoint,
there wasn't the same coverage. There wasn't the same police
urgency.
Attention. There wasn't the same urgency.
No.
And we really want to get into stories like that. And
so he was allowed to go free, and that's. I mean, he was on a rampage for a long time. I would say, and it's really wrong, but that tells you a lot about society. So
I do think that through reading these books, we are going to be learning so much about the way we as a society treat these crimes. We're going to be learning a lot about our criminal justice system. I know that through my love of true crime, I've had some of my own opinions changed 180 degrees. And so it's been a really great adventure. Me and these creepy books and podcasts and documentaries.
Yeah, it's more than just the lurid details of the crime. Yeah, there's more to it than that, which is also part of why it's so fascinating, and I think why it's kind of exploded in popularity recently. People sort of realize that there's a lot to unpack with true crime.
Mm-hmm. Well, and y'all were pointing out earlier that this is a nonfiction genre. We're not talking novels. We're not talking, these are real, true life stories. But documentary or nonfiction books, it doesn't have to be just the facts. I mean, it's still a beautiful narrative told with prose sometimes.
We both recently watched the documentary The Jinx. I borrowed it through the library. I highly recommend it.
Yes, if you have not watched it, please watch it.
About, I always want to call him Fred Durst, but about Robert Durst. And that is a perfect example of how true crime, often truth is stranger than fiction in a really fascinating way.
Yeah, The Jinx is great. I think everyone should watch it if they haven't. It's fascinating. It's really, the production value is very high, and there are a lot of twists and turns.
Nice. So there's a lot of going on with true crime. It's not just the books, the nonfiction books, but there's all these podcasts that y'all keep mentioning, and sort of documentary films that are covering true crime topics. We mentioned Wormwood earlier, which is currently just came out on the online streaming stuff, and will eventually probably make its way to the library once we can get it. What other kinds of podcasts are and sort of documentaries in this genre have piqued your interest?
Well, we've definitely already given a shout out to My Favorite Murder.
Yes.
Sword and Scale is a really great one for people who want a firmer narrative, a more structured story. And that's one where he really tries hard to get into the criminal justice system and to playing with your perspective on a case and looking at it from different angles that will, delight and surprise you and probably disturb you greatly.
Yeah, those are great. Another podcast, I think it's done by Minnesota Public Radio, is called In the Dark. The first season came out a while ago, but I was fascinated with it because it was about previously unsolved murder, this child or abduction, I guess, because they never found his body. Jacob Wetterling. He was 11. He was a couple years older than I was, and he lived a couple of hours north of where I grew up in the Midwest. And so I grew up seeing his picture everywhere on billboards in the phone book, constantly trying to solve the case. It wasn't solved. So it was really interesting to me to hear an investigative reporter go back, kind of try to piece things together. And it's really, really well done. I highly recommend people listen to it.
Another one you might want to add to your list is called Someone Knows Something.
Yes.
It is a Canadian true crime podcast, and it's very sleepy compared to some of the other ones that are out there. It feels a little quiet, a little slow, very personal. And you might like the first season, but I recommend just skipping on over to the second season.
Second season, yes. It's great.
Because it is a slightly more active case. And I love the way that the host just gets to know the people involved in the case so deeply and cares about them so much.
Yeah,
and wants to see the victims as these three-dimensional, perfectly imperfect people beyond what wound up happening to them.
Agreed.
Nice. Okay, well, we're getting close to the end of the show, so I, of course, I want to remind our listeners that this is Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show, and we're on koop.org and 91.7 FM. And we are talking about true crime with Julie Brown and Maggie Bond. And so before we go, I want to extract from the two of you your favorite true crime books.
Oh my gosh.
And maybe
so
some
hard.
of the ones you're going to cover, in the book club, if you can.
Yeah.
You've already mentioned a few things, but we've got about a minute left. So
one that I read recently that was really great was The Fact of a Body by Alexandra Marzano-Lesnovich. That one's fantastic. It's a great blend of memoir and true crime. It's beautifully written. Highly recommend it.
Oh, I really want to read that. I can't currently think of my very favorite, but I can think of one that I haven't even read yet, and it's already my favorite. We recently got got the library to order many copies of Killer Clown, which is the John Wayne Gacy story. Who doesn't? That story has everything.
It literally has everything.
It is one of the most fascinating serial killers that has ever walked the planet. And I don't want to, after having the conversation that we did, make it seem like he's this larger-than-life amazing figure, but he is a very interesting individual.
Agreed, yes.
And I cannot wait to read Killer Clown.
Same.
Awesome. Well, so I guess real quick before we go, can you remind me again when this book club meets?
Tuesday, the last Tuesday of the month. So this month it'll be January 30th, 6:30 to 7:30, 6th floor in the living room area of the New Central Library.
Sweet. And then you have another book club that you do, the Romance Book Club, Maggie. Would you remind us when that takes place?
The Romance Book Club is the second Tuesday of every month, which is slightly more confusing than the last Tuesday of every month. It is also at 6:30, and it is also on the 6th floor of the New Central Library. And this month we're reading When Dimple Met Rishi, which is an incredibly sweet story. It's a YA romance about two Indian teenagers, and I just can't wait. It's already been a really wonderful group.
Well, I'm so glad you guys took the time to come and talk to us about some of your favorite books and favorite true crime things. Thank you so much. And that's a wrap. Details about the True Crime Book Club can be found on our website at library.austintexas.gov. And for the book titles that we recommended on the show, there is a link on that page that I mentioned earlier titled Recommended on the Air, and that is at library.austintexas.gov/volumes. Thanks again, Julie Brown and Maggie Bond. Thanks to our volunteer, Federico Pacheco. Stay tuned to 91.7 FM and koop.org for rock and roll pest control, high-octane rock, punk, and metal music. Thank you. Thanks for listening to Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show. Special thanks to our producer, DJ Harris, and to the musicians who composed and performed our original theme song, Andrew Noble on violin, Kirk Duvall on guitar, and Mike Wheat on percussion. And thanks to you, our listeners. Volumes, the Austin Public Library radio show, airs Wednesday afternoons at 2:30 on Co-op 91.7 FM and koop.org. If you catch us mid-show, full episodes and other details can be found at library.austintexas.gov/volumes.